Well, my problem with rationality is it doesn't always tell, I think, all the truth about ourselves. And sometimes the sort of leakage, slightly mad leakage you get with superstition, tells the truth about ourselves in rather peculiar, odd sort of ways. And that's why I'm reluctant to give up superstition. I know it's not rational. I know there's nothing rational about it. But it does seem to me to speak a truth about who we are, like a sort of dream or a psychic leakage that isn't captured by cold, hard logic. That's what I think.
Okay, so when you say truth, I immediately think of empirical truth. So I think
Why
of
do you
facts.
think that? Why do you think that?
Because I like to rely on the scientific method and what is observable
Is
and
that
provable.
a form of superstition, liking to rely on the scientific method?
Only if it's blind. And so what the scientific method does is it changes based on observation, whereas superstition is the exact opposite of that.
Yes, that's true.
So I would say it depends what you mean by truth there. I think you're talking about a spiritual truth, a romantic truth, an emotional truth, which superstition very much speaks to. And I think on an individual basis, that's absolutely fine. If you throw salt over your shoulder, it doesn't affect me unless I'm standing behind you. And that's where the line is. And so if we take that to its conclusion, which is what we see in the world, we see small superstitions being taken to much, much greater extremes. And so
but the question is what sort of, this slippery word truth is actually rather, I mean, I'm quite interested in truthfulness.
Yeah.
And truthfulness is actually, I mean, as I say, there's this sort of leakage that can come out through superstition. It's obviously, in narrow truth terms, complete rubbish. But on another register of truth, I find it very, very interesting and what it speaks about the human condition. Now, you're quite right to say that there's all sorts of ways in which superstition, because it's quite difficult to challenge, becomes an alibi for all sorts of immorality and so forth. Well, science can be an alibi for immorality as well. You know, that can happen too. So I don't think we're disagreeing at all.
So how does that fit in with, because I consider religious thinking as a form of superstitious thinking.
Right, okay.
So how does that fit in with your worldview as somebody who is essentially paid to promote?
It's about my money, is it? It's where my money comes from.
I'm being realistic here.
Well,
but
I don't think it is a form of superstition. I mean, so, you know, my commitments are not founded on rationality in the same way that yours are. So if we're going to define that as superstition, that's fine. But there's so many of my commitments that are not defined rationally. The people I love is not defined rationally. The sort of, I mean, even the football team I support is not defined rationally, to be absolutely. So, and I think we all have many commitments that are not, and that we see the world through the lens of things that are not themselves, you know, scientifically justifiable. I mean, you know, if I wasn't religious, I'd still read lots of novels. The novels that I read would be the way in which I'd see the world. They're not scientifically true. Sherlock Holmes did not live at 22B Baker Street, and the idea that you suddenly get really baity about a book because he never did, that seems to me to be bizarre, okay? They show you things about the world, and I think that's absolutely true about faith as well. Its truthfulness is in what it's able to reveal, not in its rational justification.
I agree with you to a point, and historically I think that has been the case, but I think now it's irrelevant. I don't think we gain anything in poetry, in art, even in philosophy that we wouldn't also have if we eliminated superstition. We bear in mind that critical thinking or skeptical thinking, scientific thinking, is a baby compared to superstitious and religious thinking. As soon as we could think, we saw the sun, we realised the effect it had on plants, and we went worship it.
But here's where I don't think you're critical enough. Here's where I don't think, I mean, I think religion has thousands of years of self-critical vigilance. I think science has not got enough self-critical vigilance. And I think it hasn't got enough critical vigilance because it is so cocky with its own method that it doesn't think, what are we using this method to hide from? So I know loads of people who are scientists who live their life in a terribly sort of rigid, narrow way.
In a bubble.
In a bubble,
I
okay.
agree.
Now that sort of bubble is another form of avoidance that science is that enabling people is another form of alibi.
The last point that I would say about that is that regardless of that bubble, science is always advancing society, and religion has come to a full stop when it comes to advancing society.
Yeah, we're not about religion here. So I mean,
or superstitious thinking. Superstitious thinking is not advancing
Even
society.
the most rationalist people are superstitious. Polly Toynbee shouts at her computer. She thinks that actually shouting at her computer is going to make it change. I know, I say opposite her. It won't, because it's a thing.
But if she learned to code, she'd stop shouting at it.